AI in the biology space is obviously huge. It's growing, specifically AI in drug discovery. Biotech companies, traditional biotech companies, are quite slow. They're pretty brute force. And they have to be, of course, because like I mentioned, you have to make drugs very safely. On the flip side, you have AI-driven companies, which, software companies, which is almost the opposite. Move fast and break things. You need to create a product, an MVP, as quickly as possible. How do we study the microbiome in high throughput? How do we move biology from something that we do one by one to something that we can plug into AI and machine learning algorithms and things like that? And that was really the bottleneck that we both saw to kind of breaking this field wide open. Fundraising in today's world is very different than fundraising in a 2021 world. But I think what has not changed is that biotechs are always hard. Creating therapeutics, understanding our human body, pushing the envelope on modern medicine is and always will be very, very difficult.
Hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of Pitch Cafe podcast. Today we have with us a very young and energetic entrepreneur from Stanford University. She is a biotech entrepreneur who is creating her own niche in the space of metabolomics. For all of you guys who don't understand what the term means, you just have to wait a few more moments. But she's no ordinary person. She's summa cum laude from Stanford University, did her MS and PhD from Stanford again. And before she could pick up a job, she took the plunge of doing her own startup, Interface Biosciences. A super hit pitch at every pitch event. Investors are lined up. This is the idea which will create a new kind of future, not only for medicine, but for pharma companies who are stuck in archaic ways of taking a drug from idea to the bedside using long cycles of 10 to 12 years. Guys, we need to disrupt the space. Why does a drug take so long to reach the bedside? Let's find out from our guest today, Hannah Wastyk. Hannah, welcome to Pitch Cafe podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Awesome. So Hannah, I cannot stop wondering about your profile. What made you take this plunge? You're a student with stellar academic records. You could have done anything. You could have got like the highest paying job. You just had to pick the job. And here you are. This is like this amazing scrappy maker labs kind of place. You're hustling away. What got you to take this plunge, start Interface Biosciences? What was your motivation? And who is Hannah? Who is this person who is driving all this?
Okay, well, thank you, Vida, for having me. Super honored to be chatting with you all today. I started, I was born in China. I was adopted and grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania. Started research very early, actually. My parents were always very supportive. They weren't in the sciences themselves, but were very supportive of what I wanted to do. And so ended up volunteering at a hospital. I was doing coffee runs. I was washing dishes, things like that. And kind of was in a lab environment as a sophomore in high school. And so then wanted to kind of try my hand at research itself, and was very lucky that the lab I was in at Penn State in high school let me kind of work on a project of my own. And so from there, kind of plunged into research as a junior in high school, and was started going into science fair. So Intel International Science Fair in high school was my first year as a senior, and was really lucky to have placed first in category in cellular and molecular biology. So that kind of really kickstarted my career in research, and was something that I really enjoyed and something that I felt like I could make a big impact in. And so off the back of Intel Science Fair, I was also invited to go to the Nobel Prizes when I was in high school. In a freshman in college. So that was a really amazing experience. And I think that was really the solidifying moment of research. Yeah.
Can you double click on that? What was it like? What is the Nobel Prize event you're talking about?
Well, Nobel Prize ceremony is absolutely it's a once in a lifetime, I think, experience. It's absolutely incredible. I got to see, the discoverer of Higgs boson. I got to see a lot of the scientists that are making therapies that are saving people's lives every day. And I think that really solidified to me that this is the field that I want to be in. These are kind of the minds that I want to be around. And so that was the impetus for me to really consider going into research as a full career. And so went to University of Delaware for my undergrad in biochemistry, and then was very much a bread and butter scientist, experimentalist, basic science, was very focused on mechanism. And so felt that the impact that I wanted to make, that is what drives me every day. I want to make a big impact on the world. I want to improve human health, change the face of modern medicine. And having that foundation was really exceptional, but I felt like the basic research wasn't going to get me to the human translation element that I'm so driven by. And so felt that bioengineering would be a great way to pursue that heavier application. And so went to Stanford for bioengineering and focused on the human microbiome and the immune system. That interplay between those, I felt for a very long time, is going to be what makes the biggest change. We have so much potential there. You can Google any disease plus microbiome, and there'll be tons and tons of papers showing the correlations between the two, but no one has gotten to the causal effects. Yeah. And that to me is the most exciting thing, when there's a lot of potential, but no one has broken into it. And so came into Stanford, was really excited to go at it with that biochemical lens that I had previously, but quickly realized that the tools to study the microbiome just did not exist yet. And so had to change the way that I was thinking about the problem. Found myself in Silicon Valley. It's hard to be here. You can't be here and not drink the Kool-Aid of AI and machine learning. So taught myself how to code and had a very computational PhD looking at how the human microbiome and immune system interact with each other in the gaze of diet. So high fiber, high fermented food diet, how does that affect the contents of your gut microbiome? And then by extension, does that improve health in a chronic inflammatory way? I was very lucky to work on it. It's the largest human study to date, published in Cell and covered by New York Times. And that really kind of gained confidence that this is the research sector that I wanted to stay in. And so around that time, when that was coming out, my co-founder, Will Van Churen, who's absolutely the most technical scientist I've ever met, asked if I wanted to start a company with him. And at that point, I had always thought I was going to stay in academia. I had been in school since kindergarten. I had not left. I had no plans of leaving. And my co-founder, Will, had always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so as a tool builder, he was building the very tools I had been waiting to use. How do we study the microbiome in high throughput? How do we move biology from something that we do one by one to something that we can plug into AI and machine learning algorithms and things like that? And that was really the bottleneck that we both saw to kind of breaking this field wide open. And so when he asked if I wanted to start the company with him, again, I had to go back to what is the impact that I want to make? Am I making the impact that I want to in academia? And I felt that publishing papers is extremely important and has a time and space, but it wasn't quite the currency that I wanted to be align myself with. I felt that my brain was optimizing for what could be cool science and what are interesting questions to answer. And I really wanted to focus on difficult problems to solve. And I felt that going into therapeutics and startups would be a good way to go and make that impact that I've been chasing for a long time. And so I told Will, yes, let's start the company, dove headfirst, and really have been drinking a fire hose since then. So we incorporated the company in 2020, about a week after the lockdown. So that was a very interesting time to start a company. And then we both went full-time in midway through 2021 when I graduated with my PhD.
Fantastic. They say that companies started in the pandemic. They were, funding was plush, and you thought that you wouldn't find funding, but those companies are very lucky. I don't know if the bubble is burst, but how was it for you?
The bubble is definitely burst. Fundraising in today's world is very different than fundraising in a 2021 world. But I think what has not changed is that biotechs are always hard. Creating therapeutics, understanding our human body, pushing the envelope on modern medicine is and always will be very, very difficult. And so we kind of knew going into it that it was going to be difficult, and have learned a lot, obviously, of how the business side of things work and things like that. But yeah, unexpected, but everyone's time was unexpected.
Yeah, fantastic. Also, they say the company started in the downturn. They're very resilient and financially savvy. Did you feel that it made you smarter about fundraising?
Absolutely. I read a quote that said the companies that are going to survive in this downturn are the grittiest ones. And I definitely feel like Interface Bio is an extremely gritty company. If we can't build it, we buy it from an auction, or we try to outsource from our networks on how we can get, everything that we do at a lower cost and a lower budget. As far as
So some of the lab equipment we just saw, they were handmade. Oh my God, this is amazing. I'm hearing this for the first time. I've toured many facilities. Usually people buy them or rent them. So this is amazing. Well, I want to ask you, how did you pick your team? Every startup founder goes through this struggle. How do I pick my co-founder? How do I hire my team? Am I ready for scaling? How do I do it? So hiring is like probably one of the most crucial element of a successful startup recipe. How did you hire your team? Who are the rock stars who are, rocking it here?
I love that question because I think that company culture is something that people think is a kind of an afterthought, but it's absolutely necessary. It's necessary, but not sufficient to have an amazing company. And so hiring is one of the most important things that you can make, a decision that you can make as far as defining what that company culture is. As far as my co-founder, I was very lucky that Will had originally approached me and asked if I could start the company with him. And I think my thought process with working with Will is that, we were friends and colleagues for many years before starting the company together. And he's absolutely the most thorough and technical scientist that I've ever met. But I think the real reason that I was so drawn to working with Will, who is by far I've met a lot of people at Stanford, and Will was the only person that I had met that I would start a company with. Not just for his technical skill, but I think the way that he thinks about problems is very similar to mine, but in a complementary way that we attack problems in very different ways. So, I like to say that the company started one night very late in lab. It was like 11 o'clock, just stream of consciousness. We were working way too late. And we had, talked about what are the problems that are the biggest in the world? What are the things that are stopping them from being solved? And it was the first time I had talked to someone who had the exact same thoughts that I did. Microbiome in the immune system is the biggest problem in the healthcare space to be cracked open. And the biggest thing stopping it is high quality data sets and the tools to be developed that are going to collect that high quality data sets. So, as far as working with Will, I was definitely sold on the way that his brain works, and he's very tactical and I'm very strategic. And I think it's a nice complement to each other. As far as how we hire, I look for slope as opposed to intercept. That's kind of a thing that people talk about a lot. Someone can come in with a lot of experience, but if they're not the right mindset for a small company, for the innovation that's necessary for, every day is different, it's not going to be a good fit. And so I really look for not necessarily what is the background that you have, but what are your goals? What are your values? How do you see this field changing? How do you see yourself changing the field? And so those are the types of questions that I ask. I'm really looking for people who are independent. I'm really looking for people who also don't take themselves too seriously, because I think startups are very hard. Yeah. And if you take yourself too seriously and, that failure or, setbacks can really get to you. And so what we're doing at Interface Bio is, yes, we're creating next generation medicines. Yes, we are creating a biotech startup, but we're also creating a community that people feel valued, that they feel challenged, and that they want to work for. And so I tell them all the time, like, I want you to feel completely fulfilled, and I want this company to be able to support you in those ways. And the company culture that we created is so special. I think, like, I'm driven obviously by the science that we're doing, but also very, very strongly by the people that we've brought together, by the community that we've built. And, this just binds us together really, really strong.
Fantastic. That's a great answer. Any investor would like to hear about how you pick your team. What about the rest of the team? I know that, when co-founders meet each other, it's great chemistry, it's compatibility at many levels. What about the remaining hires? How did you went on to hire the next few people in your team?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a lot of fit. It's a big ask. When I create the company with Will, and we ask them to kind of create something from nothing, because that's where, when you go 0 to 1, you're really creating an entire pipeline from an idea, and you have to know how to create the levels to really make it happen. And so I'm looking for the ways that people think. Yeah. Are they able to create something from nothing, or are they more of a support? And support is fine, but I need to know what their strengths are, so that I can plug their weaknesses. And so when I hire someone for lead immunologist, say, I ask them, if you had this problem, and I spell out, we want to create a drug for eczema. Yeah, that's the prompt. Tell me how you would do that. Yeah. And so it's hard to put someone on the spot like that, but it's not necessarily their answer. I want to see the things that they're thinking through. Okay, well, if it's eczema, okay, I need to think about the market. What are the other drugs on the market? What are the other targets that are on the market? what are the drugs that we're able to create? How do they intersect with each other? Because we want something that's a nice balance of not on the market yet, but also innovative in that we're pushing the envelope. And so I want them to talk through those problems with me. I want them to talk through all the considerations that they have so that I know I can trust them to kind of create this very technical pipeline from scratch.
Fantastic. I know that metabolomics is a very complicated term. A lot of people want to know about it, and you gave me a brief explanation. I want to walk through that concept in a different way. If I were to start with the process of ingesting food, I consume food, then can you walk me through what are the next steps which kind of become part of metabolomics in the body, and then they start affecting the immunity of the person. And then you start thinking like the drug company, and you start looking at the pharmacogenomics of it, how the defects in immunity are being plugged by the drug. So can you walk us through this whole cycle just so we know what your product line is? Or you can start with what your product looks like. What does it mean to sign up with you for a product? And then can you walk us through all this?
Absolutely. So as far as what does our product look like, I'll start with that. Our product is therapeutic. So this is a drug that you would get prescribed from the doctor or something like that. And so when you make a therapeutic like that, the process is very long to produce and get approval for it because it needs to be safe. And so that's why, to one of your points, why it takes so long to get drugs approved, because we need to go through the FDA process, go through clinical trial, make sure that they're very safe. As far as what is metabolomics, so metabolomics is kind of a black box. And I think, genomics is kind of something that people are more comfortable with, that they know. And that's really because of the tools that we have to study of them. Sequencers to kind of sequence the human genome have been around for a very long time. Metabolomics, on the other hand, are the metabolites or the chemicals that make up your body. And I think that's less of a household name or term because we don't really have the tools prior to even 5 years ago to study the chemicals in depth in your body.
Can I say metabolites are signatures of how healthy a person is?
They're signatures of, the chemicals in your body. They could be used to say how healthy you are. They could be used to be biomarkers for different diseases, but they're a little bit more up and down. Like your genes are your genes. They're not really changing that much, but the metabolites or the chemicals in your body can be different from this morning because you ate something, or they can be different from tonight when you eat something or go to bed. And so it's more difficult.
Problematic solution.
It is. It's a perfect problem for AI because there's a lot more dimensions to it than genes, where it's, like I said, you have one readout and you can predict things on it fairly well, which is what we've been doing with, genomics and things like that. But with metabolomics, you have the time element where things are dynamic. You have things that are very, very different person to person. And so when you add those extra dimensions, the degrees of freedom just absolutely explode.
Fantastic. So, as you brought in the word AI into your, jargons just now, how does AI work on the data you supply it? I understand that you get a lot of data you work with from the pharma company or from the patient, so which reflects the metabolites in your body. I'm sure you do some tests in your lab to verify some signatures in that sample. So once you do that, what does AI do? How does AI amplify your insights? How does it bring in speed and efficiency in the drug discovery cycle? What does it do?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI in the biology space is obviously huge. It's growing, specifically AI in drug discovery. So I'm going to make some oversimplifications just to make the problem a little bit easier to digest, because it's a very complicated problem. But for simplicity's sake, traditional biotech companies are quite slow. They're pretty brute force. And they have to be, of course, because like I mentioned, you have to make drugs very safely. On the flip side, you have AI-driven companies, which, software companies, which is almost the opposite, where you move very, very fast, move fast and break things. You need to create a product and MVP as quickly as possible.
So do they create multiple variations, and can you validate the variation that is most stable and most likely to succeed? Is it possible for AI to do that? Because we call it type A, type B testing. We roll out a product version A, roll out another product, a version B, and then we see how we get traction, and then we stick with the version that gets most traction. So can you do that in AI, in software itself, or do you really have to run tests for every version of the product?
That's the question. I mean, that's a lot of questions that AI biotech companies are trying to answer. Can we increase the discovery speed? And so you can, to a point. It's just the testing and training is slower for biology because it takes time for cells to grow. It takes time for toxicity to rear its head. And so, some companies are using the approach of let's just fully computationally model a human body. And in my opinion, we are nowhere close to being able to computationally model all the nuances and all the variables that go with a human body and on top of that, human disease. And so, the trick is to get all of the positives from biotech companies, the safety, the scientific rigor, the technicality, and bridge that with the speed that you have with more typical software AI companies. And so the missing link to getting faster, high efficiency drug discovery is high quality data sets, because you have these current biotech companies that are very slow. They're getting high quality data sets, but not the quantity that's necessary to feed into the testing and training sets that AI needs to really fully leverage the power. And so these high quality data sets and the tools developed to collect those high quality data sets is the number one big issue.
Fantastic. So looks like a lot of pharma companies can be your customers. Who is your dream customer? What does your dream customer look like? What kind of drugs are they making right now as we speak?
Right. So, I mean, our dream customer is the patient themselves. So, our Interface Bio, our vision is to become a standalone therapeutics company as the likes of Genentech, for example. And so that's the customer that I have in my head that I want to help. When I say that I want to make a big impact, that I want to improve human health, I'm thinking about the customer at the end of the line. Of course, making a drug, like I mentioned, takes many, many years. Drug discovery itself can just take 10 years. And then you're talking about the approval process, which takes another 10. We're thinking between 10 and 20 years before you get a product, which is, super different than your typical startups in Silicon Valley. And so that's one customer. We're hoping to decrease that by half at Interface Bio. But the other customer that you can think about is a pharmaceutical partner. And so we are looking for pharmaceutical partners that are looking to increase the, innovation in their technology, looking to integrate AI and biology in a new way that no one else has. So of course, this is a very competitive space, but we think we have the edge there.
So Hannah, tell us a little bit about your funding scene. Who are your investors, and what was it like getting your first investor? What was the hustle? I mean, I know you're a deep tech company, and deep tech companies have long cycles before you show your product, your outcome. It's going to be a while. And who are the kind of people who gave you the first break?
Great question. So our very first check was from Pear VC. They're based in Silicon Valley, and Mar is the founding partner. Mar and Pejman at Pear had actually taught a class that my co-founder Will took, and they took a liking to Will. And so they had approached him and said, hey, when you leave this class and you start a company, we're interested in investing in you. And so that was around the time that Will had approached me and said, do you want to start a company together?
So did he take a class in the biotech or
the School of Business at Stanford? So then he had asked me if I wanted to start the company. And so I talked with Pejman and Mar, and I really liked them. They really liked me. And so they said, whatever company you build, we're going to back it. And that was our very first check. And so we were really lucky to, have great chemistry with the folks at Pear. We're very close to Pear as well. I do a lot of panels for them, and they're obviously continued to be a huge support. They're following on in our current round. And so we're very lucky to have them as a partner. As far as how the fundraising went, it was 2021. So we had tons of meetings all the time, 4 to 6 meetings a day pitching to investors.
What are some of the mistakes first-time founders make when they pitch to get their first round of funding? I'm sure they are naive about the process, and I work in pitch deck coaching. They come with 30 plus slides for these meetings. The first meeting, do you think 30 plus slides are required, or what is your suggestion?
Yeah, I think, well, the first thing that came to mind when you said that is my advice is not get discouraged. We were able to raise a round, but it was still so much work. It's very difficult. You're going to get no's a lot. The rejection is just part of the process. And so don't be afraid to hear that no. Don't be discouraged when you hear those rejections. And I think, coming out of academia, it is difficult to parse it down. And so 30 slides is typical. You think you need 30 slides for someone to understand the technology, and maybe that's true, but investors don't need to understand the technology to want to invest. They need to understand your vision. You should be able to explain your vision in one slide. And so my advice is to simplify it down and capture the energy. What is the simplest story that you can tell to capture the energy? And excitement is a universal language. You don't need to have all of the jargon for people to understand.
So Hannah, those are great tips for a first-time founder. Now you're fundraising again. What does your next round look like? And how much funds have you raised? And what exactly are you looking for in this investment round? What kind of investors do you want to partner with?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are currently raising a 2.5 million round. We raised a pre-seed of 2.2. And so these funds are going to support us to get to a really strong biotech blue chip investor. And so what it's over 75% hard committed right now. We're looking to close it very quickly. We've been really blessed with how quickly it's come together as it is. And so what we're looking for in an investor, that's a great question. We're looking for a great partner. I think we've been really lucky to have Pear. We have Pack 8. Pacific 8 Ventures is also one of our pre-seed leads. And Boom Capital also. These are great partners that have supported us, not just financially, but also in the networks that they have. They have a huge network that have helped us put together this round.
I want to double click on that. What do you mean by a VC brings a network? What kind of network? So we know that VCs are connected to VCs, but how can a founder leverage a VC for other than funding? What kind of questions can founder ask in a meeting with an investor? I'm sure you have your regular updates. You update what you do, but what else can they do to get a leverage out of that relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as much as technical founders don't want to hear it, money speaks. And so if you want to do the science that you want to do, you want to put the team together that you want to keep the team together and do the science that's really important to you, you need to raise money. And that really comes down to storytelling. And I think what investors know is the space. And so asking them workshopping with them, what is the story that's going to work? What is the story that's going to entice people to come on board? What are people excited by right now? Because that's what I love most about my job. I get to talk to people, see what they're excited about, see how they envision the world being a better place, and then convincing them that their vision and our vision is not so different from each other, and we can only get there together. And so I think investors are really plugged in on what people are excited by, so that you can get a story together that really pings all of the interest that's going on.
Fantastic. So if you're raising now, what is your ask, and what do you plan to do with the ask? If you are looking to talk to an investor or an investor wants to approach you, what is your ask as you are now in your fundraising phase, and what do you plan to do with that?
Mm-hmm. So we are a drug discovery engine. We look at the microbes that are in and on your body, and we find the chemicals that microbes produce. Like I mentioned, they are turning all the knobs and dials on your body. These chemicals that microbes produce are the language that they use to communicate with our body. We're taking those chemicals and turning them into drugs for treatment of inflammatory disease. So inflammatory disease could be eczema, it could be asthma, it could be arthritis. We're going after these inflammatory buckets and turning them into drugs. And so we currently have a fully functional pipeline. We have a lead asset and a secondary asset, and we are using this 2.5 million that we're raising right now to show safety and efficacy in mice. You have to show safety and efficacy in mice in order to get the FDA approval. We're also showing that the pipeline can generate these products very quickly. We're looking to decrease the discovery time from 6 to 10 years down to 3 to 5. And so it's supporting the MVP for that statement.
So you have mitigated the tech risk, or have you mitigated the market risk? Or are you doing both along the way?
Both along the way. We have done quite a lot of work to mitigate the technical risk, really reduce the pipeline down to practice, and now we're just churning the engine. And so this 2.5 is kind of the fuel to get the engine go now that we built the engine to begin with.
Fantastic. There's one question as we wrap up. I want to ask, what is it like working with privacy constraints and GDPR constraints, because you're bringing AI and biotech together? What is it like?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting challenge. I think IP is the currency that early stage biotechs kind of live and die by, because it takes so long for a product to get to market. And so privacy is of utmost importance for what we're doing. We have a lot of proprietary methods. We have a lot of proprietary media, like growth media that we use to grow our microbes that no one else has access to. That's one reason why no one else can replicate what we're doing. We have a lot of different protocols that are completely in-house, and those are trade secrets, because if we put them out as patents, then people could just kind of know exactly what we're doing and change it maybe a little bit and get outside the patent. So as far as methods, those are very tightly kept trade secrets. However, the patents for our actual assets, the actual therapeutics, that's where the money is. You know, a single patent on a blockbuster drug is worth several billions in a single quarter. So those are really what you want to. We have one that we have written up and we have not pressed submit yet, because we want that patent to go as long as we possibly can once it hits the market. So really those novel molecular entity patents, those therapeutic asset patents are the big bucks.
Fantastic. I don't want this conversation to end. It is so amazing and so exciting, just learning the pivots in this business. The biotech meets AI, meets drug discovery, meets healthcare. This is the space anyone would want to be in. So Hannah, what are your last few takeaways for startup founders in this space where tech meets biology? What is your advice to them?
I would say I think we have a lot more to learn from each other than we have from keeping from each other. So I'm always super open to connecting with other founders, learning from their mistakes, having them learn from my mistakes so that we can all make really novel mistakes together. I would say, yeah, resilience is a really big one. It's a difficult market out there for startups in general. It's very difficult for biotechs, and the AI drug discovery space is getting increasingly competitive, and it's only going to get more. And so I think clearing out the noise is going to be important. You know, for a technical founder, stay close to your roots. Make sure you're doing upright science. Make sure you're doing really rigorous testing, but also let go a little bit of the chokehold that technical founders usually have on telling a very thorough story and tell an inspiring one.
Okay, fantastic. On that note, thanks, Hannah, for joining us on Pitch Cafe. We'd love to have you back again.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.